So welcome back to Deconstructed. Today we're going to be talking about Heroic, and I'm here with my normal partner in crime. We're actually here together this time. Harry Nero Richards. We're here in Paris, and it's really good. What's your thoughts on Paris so far?
Honestly, better than I thought. Snails are nice. Snails are actually nice.
Oh, I haven't tried them yet.
You actually haven't?
No, not yet.
Yeah, well, it's like a chicken nugget, but more garlicky.
A chicken nugget?
Yeah, like a really chewy chicken nugget. Honestly, that's about it.
Well, there you have it, guys. That was Deconstructed today for Snails. Thanks for watching. No, but so we're talking about Heroic. Heroic probably since like a couple of tournaments after Cologne. I can't put an exact date on it, but realistically, probably being the best team in the world. String of runners-up finishes. Other than that, it's typically always playoffs apart from one blip. They play one of the most exciting brands of Counter-Strike in the world. So let's begin with their play style and what you think that brings to Heroic.
Well, yeah, it's the insitecs talks about this a lot. It's the thing of they're so active that they're just better against underdogs, because you see a lot of the international teams, they're based around the individuals, and then with Heroic, they're like one of the only teams left, really, who they're not about the individuals anymore. Like, CS has gone so much towards the international, but then Heroic is still there, just 5 Danish guys, who probably wouldn't, like, maybe a few of them would get into, like, a top international team, but not really.
Probably Shush and Stan, right?
Yeah, Shush, because he's good at his roles. Stan probably just would make it because of the value he offers outside of server, but individually wouldn't be a star player in like a FaZe or a G2.
No.
Like, he just wouldn't be. So that's where they're an interesting team to talk about, because it's not really about the individuals, unlike everyone else. And it's Cadian. It's Cadian's team. It's Cadian's system. Like, Exist is there, but it's very much a team in Cadian's image. And I always call them the Jurgen Klopp. I always do that because I mean, not only do they, yes, which means I like Cadian. So it's literally counter-pressing. Number one, it's literally counter-pressing. They lose some space somewhere, and then they push somewhere else. They are constantly. It's not just reacting. They're doing it at the start of the round as well, and it's much more nuanced than people talk about. Like, the heavy metal Counter-Strike is what people used to call Klopp heavy metal football. Klopp's. Then Cadian is like, we literally said this to Cadian at the RMI. He's like, yeah, but I think we've toned it down a little bit. And it's the same with Klopp. Klopp hasn't done heavy metal since like 2016. And it's the same with Heroic. They've got their style. They still have it. They're still different to every other team, even though 9 are maybe like a budget Heroic, honestly. Like, the way they play is similar, like active and stuff. And then that's kind of where you're left with. It's the team that's the system, and that's why they're interesting. But where it falls down is when, you know, that in these clutch moments, maybe the system isn't always there, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, like, if your pieces aren't firing, it's one that falls apart, because I guess it's kind of high risk, high reward in one aspect. You know, if you're going to push these other parts of maps and there's just someone there who's going to kill you quicker, like...
Well, that's the difference, is that they do it, like, a lot of teams have the pushes, you know, like, everyone has like an aggressive player or two. But the thing with Heroic is they do it so coordinated that it just disrupts. Like, if you just call a regular default against a Heroic CT side, you just lose. Like, you have to be, like, knowing what they'll do and take things set, like, in a different way. And it's why it's so good. It feels like AWPers struggle against Heroic. It's why it feels like individuals struggle against Heroic. Like, because even the best players in the world can't shoot 2 of the top 50 players in the world at the same time. Like, it's hard to multi-kill Heroic, and that's where they are. They're just the best traders. They're the best CT team in the world, I think, pretty easily. Yeah, G2 probably T-side.
They're kind of defining the meta of CT side, right?
Yeah, people are becoming more like Heroic.
Proactive is kind of the word that, I mean, it's the correct word, but it's the word that gets thrown about a lot. And it's also, it kind of feels like a way that they're so proactive, and maybe it is down to the fact that it's a national team rather than an international team, but it feels like something that other teams, they just kind of can't recreate. Like, maybe an individual can, maybe someone like a Hunter, and G2's excellent in a mid-round, but it's so proactive and also reactive in such a successful way that, like, you just can't, like, you can't recreate it, right?
Yeah, that it's completely unique, honestly. Like, we're in this era of just all these, like I was saying, like all these international teams, and they're the only one left, really. Like Vitality aren't French anymore. Like even Liquid, just like everyone plays the same style with the same roles and the same like weight of where they put their star players and things like that. Like, and then there's Heroic, who have Cadian. Like they're the only good team without a good AWPer, and Cadian is a good AWPer, but like without a great AWPer. I mean, like all of like there's the big five in this major. It's Zywoo, Brokey, Simple, and what's Munasy, obviously, and then it's Cadian. Like the reason it's actually more impressive that Heroic are this good than any other team. I think they play the best Counter-Strike in the world. That doesn't mean they're going to win every tournament, but it means that they've got the highest floor.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, their floor is very, very high, but I think a lot of that does come from the fact that even himself, with like being not distracted by the IGL role, but having to hold up the IGL role, Cadian is just a very impactful player, and I think if you compare him to someone like Prime Fallen, for example, it's kind of like it's the same thing. There's a reason that all IGLs kind of died, kind of fell apart, because you didn't get enough impact from the gun, but still Cadian manages to consistently find that impact, to the fact where, you know, a lot of people say you can't succeed at the top without a top AWPer. It's why maybe Ents had to get rid of Hades. I mean, it's proven wrong in an aspect, but Ents had to get rid of Hades.
Different style, different team.
Yeah, of course. But Ents had to get rid of Hades, and you know, people question Liquid with OC. I mean,
we do.
But Heroic, because of their playstyle, like, it just doesn't matter, and that's really impressive.
And it's this thing where they're the number one team, but they're like the placeholder team, and I think it's a tricky thing when you talk about the Heroic style in that way, because we're talking about a team that, you know, they're the best team in the world, but no one thinks they're going to win the major, and that's just such a weird like thing to have. And I think it's as much as we can praise the system and everything, it's like they're punching above their weight so much every game they play against these top teams. Like they're winning gunfights against the best players in the world, and that's because of the system. Like we did when I did those graphics, the visualizing for the major. Like we did 24 graphics for each team. Everyone's utility score, because like we did, like it's basically how good you are at flash assist and utility damage. Everyone, because of Heroic, looks dog shit. Like everyone was like 50 out of 100, and Heroic were like 90. But then everyone else just looked way worse.
But does that mean that
they're the only ones who can do both?
People, maybe actually they're not a placeholder. Maybe actually, you know, of course, these international teams, like we've seen it with Vitality now. Once we saw it with FaZe for half a year. We've seen it with G2 for like a couple of months. When these international teams are firing, like you can't.
They will beat a team like Heroic, yeah,
because they exist as primarily firepower, not to take away from their tactics, of course, especially with FaZe with Carrigan. But like, do you think that means that people end up actually underrating the players in Heroic? Because, like, you know, like Stan, for instance, like people are talking about him as being potentially one of the best players in the world. Shush has really good aim. Yabi's proved himself, and I think Teslas has too. So do you think people underrate the individuals because of their system?
I think it's the thing where maybe because of the system, maybe because all four of them are quite quiet. Like they're not. It's kind of like the Shiro Axel thing, but not quite. Where they don't really. It's Cadian for press and things like that. And I think Stown does probably get rated about right, because just on a pure eye test, like he doesn't headshot people even as fast as like Yabi. Like he's very much the cerebral player. He's the second caller. He does all the IGL shit that he's in the same roles as like all of the other pack IGLs. Like he's probably most of us are like Apex in his roles, like with a few more rotated positions since Sphinx come in. And then that's kind of where he's at, and it's like, is he the best Danish player? Probably not, honestly. I think he's maybe the third or fourth. I think it's him and Yabi, third and fourth. I think Device and Blamer are both better than anyone in Heroic.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a bit of a Device fanboy. You are as well.
Obviously.
Yeah. Device is the best Danish player of all time, and realistically, he's probably still the best Danish player. Blame F I'll always be critical of, you less so. I think if Blame F became far more aggressive than he is, he's not only the best Danish player, I think he's probably a top 5 player in the world. And that's what I will admit that other people won't.
Yes, and it's the thing where Blame F just kills so many people, and Stown honestly doesn't really. Like he's the only one in heroic. Like if you think about the roles, like Refresh talked about it as well. Like all the riflers have exactly the same role. They're all like, if you're lurking, you become the entry, because if you're just there, then you're the entry. Like everyone's expected to do the same stuff, be as good at trading and everything else. And then the only one who trades more than he is traded is Stown. Stown is set up to be the star player in a way the others aren't. And it's tough to think about, but he's actually as much of a beta as Blame F is.
Yeah.
Because but not in like a literal he's getting his teammates killed thing. It's just as in his role is to trade. His role is he throws the nades and he executes, and then he trades. That's his thing. He's always he's like, because it's heroic. Obviously he entries quite a lot anyway, but he's in the pack always. And for people who are in the pack that much, he doesn't do that much entering. I think because he really is set up as that star player, and I think he's probably the one who would need to step up more if they were going to win this major, for example.
So this is
he's not a big game player.
What I wanted to push us on to. I'm not sure if you'd agree. I would say for a while that it potentially hasn't actually, despite the setup, felt like Stown was the star. I think in big games recently, especially in what he does in mid-round a lot of the times, potentially Yabby has felt like the star, or at least the most impactful player. But yeah, so I wanted to bring up the big game aspect of it. And so if you think back to Cato, Stown was the lowest rated player on heroic. That, with their system, and it was what you just said with him stepping up for them to win Paris, it's kind of unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, he had a really good Rio. We got to acknowledge he had a really good Rio. But again, in the final, he dropped off, and it's a trend. It's a trend. I think the article I did, it was him and Nico. They were the two highest. So I think Stown drops from like a 1.15, 1.20 rated player to like a 1.05, 1.10 in playoffs, and that's like you're just a good player at that point. You're not a star player. You shouldn't be in these conversations with Blame F and Device. You just shouldn't. And that's within Denmark. Like, there's so many players in the world who would have Stown's roles, and if they were Danish, like even at this tournament, we can see how individually good like are loads of these players. Like even the players on.
Such a strange name now, aren't you?
I nearly did. I nearly threw out some awful names.
Do it.
But you've got all these explosive riflers, man. Like even like I'm Gamer Legion. I'm not saying they're better than Stown, but I'm. Shuey said I'm to me in Denmark.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know, honestly. Maybe that's changed since.
I don't know. I just got here.
Of course. And then JL. I'm gonna say JL. These
JL's a baller.
These riflers, if they were born in Denmark, they're on this team. I don't care. And it's that thing where the thing that Denmark does really well is they train people up, and Stown is clearly, because Stown's aim is nothing like crazy for tier 1 CS. He's just that cerebrally good that he's become the star player in the best Danish team, the best team in the world. He's the star player of the best team in the world, and in an aim training map, he's probably not even top 100 in the world, honestly. And you've got to credit him for that, but I think in the big games, I think maybe that does come back to haunt him a little bit, because he's still getting himself in these positions. He's just not killing people.
I mean, like, he certainly still has some games.
Yes, he's still positive, obviously. He's still a very good player.
Yeah, I mean, like, I kind of agree, right? When it comes to these big games, it feels like what you're actually looking at in a heroic win is like, oh, Cadian got 3 clutches. Like, Cadian matched one of these sorry. Cadian actually matched one of these Orpers, or like Shush was like an immovable object. Yabby mid-round ended the round. Like Tessa's is running out, getting headshots. It never feels like the conversation is about Stown, and I think that will always be Heroic's fatal flaw.
And it's hard to look past because he obviously, like, it's always Cadian for the system, but obviously Stown's a huge part of that. It's when Cadian, it's the Cadian Stown duo from 2019 that built this team, and Stown is obviously a huge part of all of that. And it's just that tricky thing where he's still young. Maybe it's just experience. Like, there's been lots of the best players of all time who struggled at first in big games. Like,
Look at Device.
yes, look, like, and but the thing that got Device out of that rut was the system was so good that you couldn't mess up. And I think and the thing with Stown is that as we praise the system so much, because of course you do, like, it's just so visible on an eye test, and it's hard to know why they're losing these finals, I think. Because you can say Stown individually, but it's the whole team. The whole team are like, I think only Yabi was like even respectable on that big game players thing. They're like in the finals of every playoffs, and then their players are just lower rated than they are in groups. All of them. Shush has not great big game stats either. And part of that is because they're so good at group stages that they just like they'll 3-0 every Swiss. But there's more to it. I think there's more to the big games thing.
Will they throw this one?
If they beat FaZe, they're 3-0ing so easily.
Okay.
Honestly.
That moves up the fat part quickly because I don't disagree. I just wanted to get your opinion.
The opening matchup is the only thing that will ever stop them.
Yeah.
Which is unbelievable, by the way, because they go 3-0 and then get FaZe in their opener. Like, seeding is great. But yeah, it's. I don't know where the Stown conversation honestly leads us because.
I don't know.
Because it's so hard to know if it's a time thing, if it's a. I think it's hard to see him mechanically improving.
I think with Stown, it's very much a case of once Heroic get over this runners-up rut, I felt good to say, but when they get over that, like when Astralis got over that, when they became the best team in the world, it was no longer a thing of like, oh, X player. You know, if you look back at Atlanta, it's like it's no longer like Kiev got through the major final. It was
the team.
It was the team, and also it was Device. Device was there. He was still doing the business. If Heroic get over that, so they win this major, they go to spring finals. They fucking win that. You know, I honestly don't know if they're in Dallas, but maybe they win that. Start off CS2 well. If that's when we move into CS2, I think if any team's going to start off well, it will be them. Like, if Stown then is a key figure in these big games, that's when you look at it and it's like, okay, Stown has gone over that. He is now, like, this is where we have the conversation with him playing a Device. If that doesn't change, that's when you look at it and it's like, okay, Stown's not the player we pretended he was, or we thought he was rather. He fits this system, he's integral to this system, but what matters more is the pieces around him. So let's move on to one of them.
Well, I was going to say this is the thing with Heroic, like their uptick recently. Like, as much as they've probably been the most consistent team since Stockholm. Like, if we did a ranking for all of that, they're far and away. They're the ones who've been at playoffs at all of these events, just every event, just playoffs, and it's the thing of why are we now talking about them as the best team in the world when we didn't before? And I think the answer is Yabi. I think when Yabi is Heroic's best player, they look like they can beat the best teams in the world. And it's crazy because he was on Copenhagen Flames and he wasn't even, like, people didn't talk about him like this then. And I think he's just adapted so well to the Canadian system. And he's like, we talk about Stan as maybe the beta, but Yabi's like it's hard to define the roles in Heroic, but Yabi's the lurker. He's the one. He's the late round guy, and he's just so good at it. And it's so hard to think about him in this way because we've also so used to being like Heroic winners team, blah blah blah. Because when Stan was their best player, you don't talk about him in the same way we talked about Yabi at Katowice. Probably like Yabi was like walking towards that MVP until the final, where Hunter just snatched it because he's just so good in those big games. Like, and I think a Heroic in Paris where Yabi's playing better than Stown isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think if Stown can be that secondary caller, the third best player on a team, second best player on a team, like that is completely fine. But what we're looking for from Heroic to win a trophy, I think, is Yabi playing like he did in Katowice throughout the whole tournament, and then you can have Tessus be the kind of supportive, entry on T side, anchor on CT side. You can have Shush be the modern Magisk, just multi-kills every time you go to his site. Like, you can have that as the supportive cast, and Cadian getting 25 flash assists a game. That's fine if you've got both of your riflers actually popping off, and that has been the blueprint this year. That's why they're getting to these finals. And I think Yabi, when you watch Yabi, you can see that he's got that extra mile that maybe Stan doesn't.
Well, so this is the thing with Yabi, right? So Yabi joins just before Cologne last year. They fucking bomb out of Cologne.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're
just after winning a tournament of refresh as well.
Yeah. So you're looking at that point, you're looking at Yabi, you're looking at the Copenhagen Flames roster, and you're thinking, maybe Heroic went for the wrong member of Copenhagen Flames. Not sure who else you'd suggest, honestly.
Yeah,
but
not sure.
When you look at it and how really poorly they played, you're thinking maybe, but then it's also their first event that just didn't get a honeymoon period. Whatever. Very quickly, once they slotted him into the system, and I spoke about this with him earlier, it was just a case of finding his spot in the system. He didn't even feel like he had to adapt to Tier 1. Like, you'll hear a lot of players come up from where he was, and it's like, it's a little adaptation because, like, Tier 1 players, they always play high percentage, they don't go for this peak, they don't go for that peak. Gavin was just like, no, I just got it. Like, I slotted in, and I think that's something you can really tell, because I remember, like, a couple of games on, like, Vertigo, Kato, where, like, it's like, kind of late round, Heroic or exec in, maybe it doesn't look like it will go their way, and suddenly the observer switched to Yabi. Yabi's just walking through mid. Like, he's just, no one knows he's there. Like, I mean, they probably do, they're probably shitting themselves because they don't know where Yabi is yet. And he just runs around, and I agree with you. I think for Heroic to win here, it's going to be because Yabi is consistently finding the space to do that, and I think maybe if he's doing it tomorrow against FaZe, just as a side note because we're recording it now, the night before Legends, if he does that against FaZe, I think we'll get a very good picture very quickly of what level of Heroic we're going to see. I think if they come out all guns blazing, because bear in mind, like, FaZe have played challenges, and people
normally a buff.
People will say that is a buff because you're warmed up, used to the studio environment, all this. If he comes out and he's like ready to go, ready to do that, he's finding these plays. I think Heroic instantly go from like one of these 4, 5 favourites. It still feels a bit strange to include Na'Vi in that, honestly. Not a lot of people would.
Playoffs, every event.
Yes, of course.
Last Cisco major. There's reasons.
Unless NPL plays like he did at the RMR, they don't stand a chance. But anyway, I think for me personally, they go from being one of the favourites to, okay, this is the time when it gets to the final, it's not going to fucking matter. Because this will be when they learn. You can't always get second. Even TSM didn't do that. They were semi-finalists a lot.
Well, more events, to be fair to them.
More events.
Chances.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does feel like a matter of when. And I do worry that maybe CS2 is going to ruin this because they're the best. Honestly, it would be so perfect if they won this major because it feels like low-key they've just perfected CSGO. Like, I don't think you can play a better style than they currently play.
So, hold on. I've got to pause you a second. So you think CS2 might ruin a Danish team? And no offence, Danish people when it comes to CS are fucking freaks. If anyone's going to figure out the best way to blow up a fucking smoke... Okay,
maybe that's
guys. Like, lazy
narrative. But it's...
No, but it's fucking true.
Yes. No, as in mine was a lazy narrative.
Oh, right, yours was lazy.
But I just think it would be perfect if they won. I think this is what Elliot said, AZS, Twitter famous. So what he said is that Heroica, they're Manchester City. If there was a 38-game league season, they would win it every year because just over a big enough sample size, the pressure's different, all sorts of things. They'd their system is so good that they just eventually win, like expected rounds, whatever the fuck. They would just they're that team that over a big enough sample size would win. And then in CS we just have tournaments. It's always single elimination. There's always a chance when you play against a Simple or a Zaiwu, or like, because it happens in the Premier League. Like you'll like when City win the league, they normally still like. Well, recently it's not been the case, but there's games where you just lose because of individual brilliance, and the difference is that over 38 games that doesn't happen consistently. And with Heroic, it feels like they get to these finals, it's like such a visceral like feeling, like we're in a final, like this is the moment. In a league you wouldn't have that, and they'd just win every time. I genuinely think that.
Do you? I agree entirely, but do you think maybe like in some of these finals maybe they've been unlucky? Like Outsiders, was that a
blowout? That was awful.
Yeah, but Outsiders were like, come on, those fuckers ain't doing that again. G2, Cato, they haven't looked like that since. I can't even think off the top of my head what other ones.
Well, it was Vitality at Rio, the second Rio.
Vitality, yeah. And
they did beat FaZe. It's easy to forget they beat FaZe at full finals. Yeah. Like, that was a game that FaZe would always win, you'd think. Like, the most clutch team. They beat the most clutch team in overtime. Like, that felt like a turning point, and then they've sort of reverted. And I think maybe the home crowd, maybe there's lots of things it could be.
Didn't you write an article saying home crowd advantage just exists?
It doesn't really. But that's because when you analyse something like that over a large enough sample, there's times like there's home teams who aren't really home teams, you know? Like that article would include Heroic at full finals the year before when everyone hated them and was booing them as home favourites. Like it's I think for it completely depends on the individuals, and I think for players like I think Heroic, who was so used to being hated, like just walking out and actually feeling that appreciation. I think Cloud9 at Dallas was similar. Honestly, they're a team that like they don't have a home crowd. Like it's Na'Vi. Na'Vi are the people you like, and then Cloud9 are just kind of there. And then in Dallas, it was all the NA teams got knocked out, and everyone loved Cloud9, and Cloud9 won. And I think it's the same thing with full finals. Astralis weren't there. The Danes just will feel like, well, fuck it, we like Heroic now, whatever. Forget about everything, the valid reasons they didn't like Heroic for. And then you see that extra burst from all the players. You see how well they play when they have just that slight release of pressure. And at this major, they're not going to have that. They're just not going to have that. If they play against a team like... Because it's weird, it's so hard to do this narrative properly, because against Furia, they just always kill Furia in Brazil. They've done it twice. Even Simple was choking against Furia in Brazil, and then Heroic turn up and just completely shut them down. And it's hard to know why then in the final that's not the same thing. It's why it's not the same thing that's happened. And I'm sure if you ask any of them about it, there'll be so many different factors going into it, and it's what will make this time different is the question. And it's honestly, I think they only win the major if they get a huge overperformance from Yabi, like we said, or like someone like Cadian. Whereas, because when Outsiders won the major, is JM MVP like the best event of his life? 1.3 rating.
Cloud9, Skadoodle
overperforming. Yeah, it's if you're because it's the Heroic aren't underdogs, but in terms of what you're looking at as win conditions in a final against one of these international teams that's playing well, I think for a win condition you probably do need your AWP to step up more than maybe above Cadian's normal level. I think you probably do need that, because this playoffs, if everyone survives the legend stage, it's so stacked. Like there's not going to be an easy game. Like you've got really scary underdogs that could qualify. You've got the big five teams, and then below the big five you've got like Furia, Liquid, Ents, who are all very capable of being anyone
Liquid
really.
Right now,
I think in a one-off game,
Counter-Strike?
Yes, and in a one-off game, I don't know. It's like Kindle can be good over a series, whatever. I think they've got so much experience. It's like you can't see them going past top 8, but if they did beat like a choking Vitality or something, like would you be mega surprised? I don't know. I think every team is. I think there's a clear big 5, and I'd probably put Heroic right near the top of that, and then below that, there's lots of teams who could surprise me on the day. I think is how I would put it.
I think it really depends how Swiss goes, but honestly at this point, I'd be surprised to see Liquid in playoffs. I'd be surprised to not see Ents in playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the other one of those three you just
Furia.
Furia. Depending on what Furia we get, yeah, very easily could be in playoffs. I mean, they're one of 3 teams to be in.
That'd be good for Heroic, honestly. If they drew Furia or something.
Good. Na'Vi, it's really hard to not see them in playoffs. But I think
there's
a world.
playoffs.
I do think there's a world. FaZe, there's a world. G2, Heroic, Vitality, nailed on. They're all in playoffs. I think 9 could be.
Yeah, I was gonna say the that's the top 8 ranking and all of that. But then you've got teams like 9, Monty, all of these underdogs that. Okay, well, the teams aren't used to, and it's a Swiss stage. You can't prepare for your matches as well as you want to. Your analyst is just staying up all night watching demos. That's just how Swiss works. And I think I can see these international teams fumbling in Legends in a way I can't see Heroic. I think Heroic 100% guaranteed playoffs. When I can see G2, Vitality, and FaZe all choking and losing. It's a 20% chance, but it's a 20% chance. I mean, Heroic, the system is what prevents that. And then in playoffs, it's you need to have something that counters those international teams. If those international teams survive, then it's hard to see Heroic winning major. It really is.
So we'll go back to that point because I've not looked yet, and I'm wondering whether you have. In challenges, we had OG, Mouse, Nip. OG, Mouse, Nip.
Nip qualified.
What was the other one?
What international teams?
That were in that 14 group of death. OG, Mouse, Nip.
I don't know. Not important.
Was it Ents? It was Ents.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
The 6 to 8 seeds.
Yeah, it was Ents. I haven't looked. FaZe, Heroic, G2, Vitality. Are they in a little mini group of death this time?
No, it's okay. So FaZe went 3-1, so they're 9 to 11. I can't remember exactly. Heroic are 3rd or 4th.
It's just shit seeding.
Yeah, it's shit seeding. Okay. It's shit seeding. Heroic actually have quite a high seed, and FaZe have a really low one, I think. Okay, and same with Vitality and who's Vitality playing? G2.
Yeah, Vitality G2.
Vitality G2 is another just seeding fuck up because of the way the RMR's panned out.
Cool. So that kind of kills what I was going to say, but also it doesn't matter that much. I can't see a world where Vitality, G2, Heroic aren't in quarterfinals. I see a world where that French crowd doesn't matter for shit. In fact, actually,
probably negative.
That could impact Zyru more. Because, Zyru's a lovely guy, he's a really good player, but by his own admission, he is not a superstar. He has no interest being a superstar.
Well, he is, unfortunately.
And I interviewed him today, right? I haven't told you this yet. He said to me today, I don't even care about winning this major because I'll have CS2. This guy, right?
Do you know how good he is at the game? Do you know how good he is at the game?
I know he's good.
How is he not just winning everything?
I know he's good, right? And
what do you mean?
was wrong. I'll hold my hand up. I was wrong. He doesn't necessarily bottle big games. But I don't think he has the mentality to make sure they win big games in a way that someone the obvious comparison, Simple does. Now, I think Simple does. I don't think Na'Vi has what it takes to win this major. I would not consider them a favourite. I think FaZe absolutely fucking could. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
G2, obviously, absolutely could. Heroic, I think... No, I actually want to say Ents could. I think it would be quite fitting for the last CSGO major to have an underdog.
Best Danish RGL.
Best Danish RGL, of course. Bless you, dude. I'm shameless.
Prefer to read it on Dust2 DK, to be honest, but it's fine.
I won't speak on that. But so, I think, genuinely, I'm putting it out there now, if I was a betting man, which I used to be, and I'm not anymore, don't bet on the amount of throw-ins in the game.
I never even knew you did that. That's insane.
Really
That's insane.
Yeah. Anyway,
God.
I think Heroic will win the major. Thoughts?
Okay, so I think it's like I really, really want them to. I really want them to. If I could choose anyone, it would be them. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I think it requires too many things to go right.
Then who wins?
I think it's literally just about who catches fire between Phase G2, Vitality, Na'Vi. I think if any of them catch fire in a way that
you think
they can, really? Yeah, I generally think Na'Vi are probably being still underrated. Honestly, they just make playoffs every event, and Simple Electronic are just really good. They're just really good. I'm not as high on Bit as a lot of people.
Understandable now, to be honest.
Yeah, like but I was never that high.
You seemed ridiculous for a while, but
yeah, I was a bit early on the Bit not being as good as 2021 made him look, and that's
it's barely for 2021.
But it's
2020.
It's not even a thing with Heroic about. I still think they're favourites. I think if I had to make odds, they would be my favourite. That, like, when we did power rankings, they were top of my power rankings. They're the best team in the world, and I would be surprised if they won. I think it's everything we've said so far, and I just think it requires a lot of things to go right. And I think there's a higher chance one of those teams just catches fire with, like, G2's fragging power, Phase's fragging power, clutch power, like, even Vitality. Like, I think people are still underrating how good Zyro's been this year, and I think Spinks stepped up. And okay, we can talk about how much Dupree needed to overperform for them to win in Rio, and it was a lot. Like, it was a lot. But there's just something holding me back from pushing Heroic over that precipice to being more than an interim.
I'll say about that. Like I said, I think G2 Phase could easily win, just as I could very easily see Vitality to some degree bottling it. At the same time, I interviewed Dupree back in Cato. I interviewed Dupree today, and I interviewed Spinks a few days ago. Back in Cato, the one thing that really stuck out to me with Dupree was that he said the most important thing for us this year is Paris. We have a long-term plan. We are, like...
Team's built to win Paris.
He was like, everything that happened here is okay. We are on track. This is after Liquid. He was like, we are on track. We've still got a long way to go. We are on track. We will peak in Paris. Spinks said in that interview the other day, we did not peak at Rio. We are almost there, right? Today, Dupree said, I can't tell you 100% if we didn't peak in Rio, but you've seen it before, probably referencing Astralis. A peak can last months.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they did, even if they didn't, these Vitality players, and Zylo as well, when I spoke to him as well today, these Vitality players have so much belief in whatever the fuck this plan was they made, and it seems to have worked so well so far.
Yeah, they beat Heroic in the final as well. They've done it before.
They very easily could win this major, and I actually think, as much as it fucking pains me to say, because I kind of want to see some French people cry. Just poor from me.
Poor from you.
Poor from me. I think if it's not Heroic, it will be them. But that also does kind of make me happy, because then Dupree 5 majors, and I could tell from earlier, that would really mean a lot to him.
Yeah, I mean...
He looked giddy when he was talking about that. Yeah,
just the possibility, right? And I think that would also be beautiful, honestly. Just for pure narrative, Dupree's my boy, obviously. As much as I've called for his head, he's still my boy.
I literally thought you were Dupree for like 3 years.
Yeah, those were the days, honestly.
Before we knew what each other looked like.
Yeah, and it's... But back to Heroic, I can see so many storylines of G2 Phase finals, all of this.
Nico final.
I can't see Heroic not just losing themselves again, and I really hope they prove me wrong. But I don't think anyone can say anything that will convince me otherwise at this point.
It's the last thing, and I think this will become the big storyline if they do. Kind of similar to Rain last year, especially getting the MVP. is it's Nico final chance, it's Zyber final chance.
Cadian and Stan final chance.
Cadian? Like, fuck that, fuck their final chance.
For CSGO.
Let's not pretend like they had chances before they got to one major final. But I don't even think people, yeah, it was a chance, but I don't think people were looking at it like, they don't have a Nico or a Zyber. They're not that. I think it's one of the things that actually allowed Carrigan and Rain to win that major last year and it will be the extra bit of motivation it gives Cadian. Think about where Cadian's been in his career. Literally fucked out of Denmark. They wanted nothing to do with him. He was working as a fucking analyst when he should have been on the up. He goes to NA. Goes to NA. Does really well in NA. Gets to North. We don't need to talk about that time.
Mm.
And he has grinded this way that, like, just having a last chance, I don't know if that's enough for some of these players, especially Zyber now talking to him. Nico, I think it's slightly different. I also spoke to him today. Nico, I think he's feeling more the last chance. I don't think he wants to be another Guardian, for instance. I think for Cadian, this redemption arc, this climb back up the mountain, I don't think either of us have had the chance to interview him yet. I think that's going to be the main thing on his mind, and I think, unlike maybe Stan, maybe Shush, we've said they all drop off, I think that's going to be the main thing on Cadian's mind, and I think we probably will see a Jade.
Yeah. He's the protagonist.
He is the protagonist, and he always has been.
Yes.
Even if
just didn't know it yet.
Times thought he was the antagonist because he's very loud.
Yeah. There's lots of angles on Cadian, and I just choose to see him as the IGL he is. I think he's built a system like no one else has, and you can never take that away from him.
No.
And I really fucking hope that he wins this major.
Me too. And seeing as this episode is being titled "Will Heroic Win the Major?"
Is it?
Yes, it is.
It's not good for SEO, that.
No, it's not. But who gives a fuck?
YouTube.
I don't care.
Good.
Heroic, in my eyes, will win the major. You said they won't. But what I will say is we both really fucking want them to.
Yes. Best CSGO team, last CSGO major. Please make it happen.
Yeah. And on that note, I think that's everything from us, at least in this episode. Maybe in Paris, maybe we'll do one more. I've kind of enjoyed this setup. I feel like we should do one more while we're here. Maybe if it's nothing to do with the major. We'll see. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Paris is going to be fucking great. It's been great so far. It's the final CSGO major.
Good narrative.
Sorry? Fucking bastard. But yeah. Whoever fucking wins, gotta hope it's heroic. There's a lot of narratives, a lot of teams we could talk about. I think the main thing is that we all just fucking have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And we hope this has added to anyone's enjoyment because we just chat a bunch of shit. So,
on brand.
Stick around, there'll be more shit being chat. We've got a lot of interviews coming your guys' way. We've already got one with Kraz now, and fuck knows, like, Naf's coming. He's done one. Rain, we did Rain today. That was cool. That was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Alexi B had a cool one with us. So yeah, we've got a lot of content coming. Nice.
Peace.